Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. In this video I will be covering the best transistor brand on earth, Spectral. And welcome back again. So, I made a video previously about Macintosh. As you can see here. That was a video reviewing it, and just to give you some relevancy on how it compares to Spectral. So bass, treble, mid-range, as you can see, blah blah blah. And for most people that will probably sound like the best thing that they've ever heard in their life. But then a new beast arrives. Spectral. Spectral is a very snobby, exclusive brand, very expensive, American based, I think around Silicon Valley or something like that. They don't really have a lot of hi-fi presence in the hi-fi world. There aren't really any people who know of Spectral, only very few audiophiles. And these are the numbers that I would give Spectral. So, of course, we're going from a scale from 0 to 100, where 0 is crap, 100 is the best possible sound. And these are, these numbers kind of tell you what we're dealing with. Spectral is basically the most detailed, most natural transistor sound out there. It's so linear, it's so separated, it's so layered, it's holographic like nothing else. When you listen to a spectral system, a modern spectral system set up in a proper way, on a proper speaker, in a proper room, it kind of makes you feel like stuff like Macintosh, Past Labs, and Mark Levinson. If you compare it to that, it almost feels as if those are television sets from around 1995, and Spectral is like the new OLED, expensive screens from around, I don't know, the $2,000 to $10,000 range, 4K, 8K, all this crap. Just to give you some perspective, it's so clear. It's so tuned in, it's so natural. We don't really see this happening usually with transistor brands. Transistor brands have a tendency of being bright, mechanical, lifeless, two-dimensional. Only very few of them seem close to natural. And let me tell you a story, a quick story. When I bought my Macintosh MA6900 transistor amp, I was of course very, very happy. And to start with, I had a ProAC D18 speaker. And I thought, wow, this actually sounds pretty good. But then I went back to the store, and I noticed that the guy who sold me the speakers, he had the exact same speakers with Spectral equipment. And I was just awestruck. I couldn't really understand that these were the same speakers that I had bought. And it really made me kind of almost regret buying the Macintosh amplifier, because the Macintosh amplifier had this like low class level warm sound, but when I then listened to the Spectral gear, I quickly realized that it was just a completely different class of transistor sound. And still to this day, Macintosh, around 10 years later, they make a sound that's a hell of a lot better than the MA6900. It is a lot better, but it's still flawed in the same Macintosh kind of way. It's still very two-dimensional, still very flat at the wall. You can't really see where detail starts and ends. it just feels very flat, very boring, very conservative, very restrictive, very safe. And Spectral just has this kind of ability almost to simulate really high class tube gear. And the grain, the fine grain and the detail, and how you can observe the detail right where you're sitting, past the walls, many feet, past the back wall, behind the system. You can almost, when you're walking from your sitting position towards the, what's it called? Towards the sound equipment, you can almost see it, see the, what's it called? The image, where you're sitting, where you're at, and past the wall. It's just, it's like a holographic 3D projector. So that is what makes Spectral so awesome. And maybe it's the MIT cables or whatever, because usually when you have Spectral, you have to use frequency locked cables, and that means Spectral cables or MIT cables. That's what they recommend, so you don't burn the gear off, because apparently it's built for that. But there are some dealers out there that still say that you can use regular cables. I haven't yet tried that, but I was really surprised listening to MIT and Spectral cables on Spectral equipment, and I'm usually not a fan of MIT cables. I really hate that that cable brand. They do some awesome things, some few awesome things, but I find it generally being very unnatural. But this was actually one of the few times where I was actually considering buying MIT cables, solely because of having listened to Spectral. It's just a totally different type of sound with Spectral. And I think it kind of adds an extra element to the Spectral sound, having MIT cables, getting that very linear type of sound, separated sound. So let me just read a bit. So conclusion, the detail is just unreal, super dry, separated in layers you don't hear with other gear, ultra crisp, and very different view on the detail aspect. That actually makes you doubt if you've listened to the music that you're testing on the equipment. I mean, I listened to Diana Krall, some regular pop music, B.B. King, a lot of bad recordings, and Metallica especially. And I almost couldn't recognize the music because of the layering and the fineness and the naturalness and especially the way that the details went from right to left and left to right channel. It just almost sounded unreal, like I left planet Earth and visited another planet. It was just crazy. And the precision, the precision was a lot like Nagra, which is also like the second best transistor equipment out there. But it's that precision combined with naturalness. You don't see that in the hi-fi world really with transistor gear. You almost always have this either or priority. So, I mean, when you can compare it to brands like Macintosh, Paslabs, and Mark Levinson, and you take their top gear, power amp, preamp, all that, big living room, big speaker, all that, it just sounds primitive and boring, and like it doesn't care, and linear in a two-dimensional way. It just it doesn't have that magic, And I don't know enough about the Spectral gear, how it's built, because when I look into it, I can't really see why it's that good looking at the parts, but they've obviously focused on some very different things because sound wise it's just on a completely different level. So I mean, again, with the layering, it's just on a different level you don't really see with other gear. And this was actually one of the few times where I actually liked listening to Wilson audio speakers. So I don't really like Wilson audio speakers, but MIT cables, Wilson audio speakers are almost just like built for Spectral equipment. So, yeah. And I can't really mention their names, but I've spoken to quite a bit of people in the higher levels of the audio industry with other brands, and officially they won't admit it, but unofficially, then they do recognize Spectral as the best, and most of them agree with me that Nagra is a clear second. It's a bit more of an analytical, not quite so natural sound, but also Nagra is also just crazy good. Check that out also. And then we've all got like our own opinions about the third, fourth, fifth, and so on best brands, and most of us say that it's the Agostino, Gryphon, YBA, Burmeister, but they're all like far away from this type of sound, even though they are really, really good brands. I just have to mention this. All genres, and especially Metallica, sounded just awesome with Spectral gear, and I did not expect Metallica to actually sound good with this type of gear, but I was expecting Metallica to sound very bright and harsh, but quite the opposite. I was amazed how the layering was so deep with Metallica. I've always struggled to hear Metallica on a lot of equipment. It's always been harsh, bright, closed in, and got this like echoing harsh type of sound, but it was just heavenly. And I mean, that's probably one of the only things that I can't really repeat on my audio note system. It's not the best audio note system in the world, the one that I have, but I always felt like Metallica never really sounded at its very best with audio note gear. I mean, it obviously sounded better than pretty much anything in the world at the highest levels of audio note gear, but this is the first time where I heard Metallica sound so beautiful and natural and layered, and the key word, like I've written here, the sound is just so intelligent, and information is the key word. And especially when you combined it with a ceramic driver speaker like Martin Design or von Schweigert or stuff like that, it's kind of a thinking type of sound for people who are I don't know, engineers, technically minded, but in a way where it's so natural that it doesn't bother you. It kind of puzzles your mind listening to Spectral gear. It really messes with you because it almost feels as if you enter the matrix and you kind of lose track of what is real. Are you real? Is the sound equipment real? Is the world real? Are we all living in the matrix right now? What's going on? Because Spectral just kind of takes you away from the world, and it almost feels more real than the world that we live in. It kind of makes you doubt everything when you listen to that, especially when you start listening to Wilson audio speakers on it and MIT cables and all that. Those are generally things that I do not consider to be good pieces of audio gear, especially with everything else on the market. Nagra is the exception. It actually sounds pretty good with that. But it just makes you kind of doubt your very existence. What's the purpose of life and all of that? It's just, there's so much information. There's so much access to detail. It's just crazy. And having audio note gear, I actually linger for linger, is that the word? No, I actually yearn for having a spectral, an extra system that is spectral, and that typically doesn't really happen with me, because usually when I listen to other transistor gear, I'm like, yeah, it's okay, but nah, don't really feel like it. Spectral is the only exception, and Nagra. Spectral and Nagra is the only time where I think, damn, if I also had a transistor amplifier and a really low, really high quality, low dB speaker like Martin designed for Schweigert, stuff like that. I don't know, Peak Consult, stuff like that. It just sounds heavenly with Spectral. So yeah, maybe one day. If I win the lottery, then I'll be able to get that. Negatives. There are a lot of negatives with this brand. The price, of course. I mean, it's, if you take like the most expensive Macintosh, Past Labs, and Mark Levinson, it's clearly a lot cheaper than that, but it's still quite up there. We're talking about. If you're getting this gear, it's more of a question of, are you gonna live in a house or are you gonna own the gear? We're talking about those type of prices. And yeah, it's kind of off-putting that you have to have Spectral or MIT cables that are frequency locked. But I mean, some of the dealers told me that you can still actually use normal cables. I haven't tried it, but I can imagine that the sound would be even more natural. But yeah, and check this out. This is their homepage. One moment. This is their homepage. Just look at that. It's like, what the hell is this? Best audio transistor brand in the world, and then they've got a homepage like this. It's like, are you kidding me? I can't even see the products. I have to go into reviews. Digital source of 1995. What is this? What am I looking at? It's like, and just look, distributors. It's like, not very international at all. Kind of makes you think, what the hell is going on? But yeah, this is a look at their gear, and kind of weird, huh? Yeah. I don't know. Kind of weird, the whole thing. It's definitely very, very different, this brand. It's not like a big bragging rights Macintosh type of way of marketing their stuff. Just very different brand. You don't really get this type of brand in the audio space. And it takes almost forever for them to release new gear. I mean, that could be a good thing. They claim that that's respect to their customers, and they only release stuff when they consider it being good enough. I mean, that's fine, but it's not made for, Apple fanboys who want the newest new, who want a low price gear and who has a lot of functionality and stuff like that. It's a totally different mindset. This is equipment made for people that have made it, who are probably a very successful surgeon or a lawyer, or boring people probably, who want a bit of, pizzazz and excitement, and they want to go out in the city, and they buy like a $5,000 bottle of champagne, and those type of people. Just me guessing, but it's a totally different type of customer that they're targeting. It's not the the people who buy Macintosh, Paslevs, Mark Levinson, or whatever brand on the market. It's a totally different type of customer. So yeah, a bit here you can read about the pairing. I mean, Spectral and Nagra are like ultra detailed monsters, and you don't really want to take a Spectral preamp or a power amp and put it together with another brand. Same goes with Nagra. You get some horrible results. It will give you a totally wrong impression of what they can, how they actually perform. So yeah, and this is actually worth taking into consideration. Some few people might think that Spectral is a bit boring, technical, and I mean, changing cables away from MIT will help with that. I was told by a couple of dealers, but I haven't tried it myself. But I mean, I like the sound with MIT and Spectral cables. It was very good, very good. But if you want a more fun, exciting, natural sound that kind of leaps towards you, and no, then Spectral is probably not your cup of tea. I mean, it's a detail monster. It looks at things from a technical point of view. Yeah, but I mean, they don't really have a presence in the hi-fi world. It's kind of a kept secret. And when you usually hear it, it's only with Wilson speakers and a couple of other speaker brands. And it's a bit annoying. It's a bit annoying because then you don't really get to hear the good Spectral sound. I mean, the best Spectral sound I have ever heard was Martin Design Coltrane. I think it was the old version. I haven't heard it with the newer version. And just so good, so crisp. Just that's a speaker that's just made for Spectral gear. And von Zweigert, I've been told that's been good with Spectral equipment. I've only heard Spectral equipment like I'm thinking like 6 times, something like that. And most of those times it was with Wilson Audio speakers. There are also some other speakers I can't remember. I think I heard it with Rockport. Also sounded really good there. But yeah, just an awesome brand. And you really want to go for those low dB speakers. It kind of gives you more that depth, that bandwidth type of detail, where when you're going with more efficient speakers around 95 to, I don't know, 110, something like that, then it doesn't really fit the whole Spectral sound. So just to let you guys know that you don't really want to put a horn speaker or something like that. You don't want to combine an audio note speaker with Spectral gear. I mean, those are just 2 top brands, but going in totally different directions sound wise. So it's just Spectral. It's the best. It's simply the best. And I also recommend trying Nagra. Nagra is pretty much hitting these numbers here. I would just say that it's only on the naturality, and I think it's pretty much just on the naturality. I would say like Nagra is probably like 80 instead of a 90. But everything else is pretty much like Nagra. Detail probably not 95, more like 90. But Spectral it is just the best transistor brand on earth. It's my opinion. It could be that you have your opinion. You can, of course, note that down in the comments. But, I mean, if you ever get the chance to try Spectral equipment, go and check it out. And they also have a pretty amazing CD player. Not the best in the world. That's probably why I would say that Spectral is not in the top level. There's some other transistor brands that probably do that a tiny bit better. But, I mean, listening to that on a Spectral piece of gear, CD player with a with amp, Spectral amp, I mean, of course, gets better because of that. But money-wise, I wouldn't really recommend that. But man, is it just good. So yeah, maybe one day I can own that when I've won the lottery. But yeah, that was all with this review, and I hope you guys liked it. Remember to subscribe. Bye.